that we're going to have a lot of fun today. That's what I can say. I think we're going to have a lot of fun. I just hope we are. That's all. So anyway, welcome.
And we're on the air.
Are we really? All right, we're on the air. Welcome, everybody.
I see that red light flashing.
Yeah, welcome everybody to the Mastermind group. It's good to have you here. We all get together every week at 3:00 on Wednesday on Las Vegas, on Las Vegas time. So, and we are really live. So welcome everybody. This is SoundBroker Mastermind Group. Like-minded people getting together to figure out what's going on with news, with tips, with tricks, so that we could all survive these tough times, so that we're here when things get better. And they will get better, I have a feeling. I'm feeling really positive about this, right? Is everybody feeling positive? Yes.
6 days.
Yep, 6 days to the election. I hope everybody has voted. And if you haven't voted, don't trust the mail system is what they're telling us these days. But go out and vote, and it's a good thing. You'll feel good about it. You'll feel good about yourself, and you'll feel good about being part of America, which is really a good thing. Today we have Bobby Schneider is in the room, and he is, he's done a lot of things. He was with Beyoncé and Jay-Z and Rihanna, and lately he's also the production manager for the Pentatonix, and he has been doing compliance. So we're going to get into that, and Bobby's going to talk about COVID compliance and that kind of stuff. Before we get into that, I just want to say how fortunate we all are. And what I mean by that, when I say that we're all fortunate, could you imagine that if you're a dancer working for the ballet company right now, and all of a sudden the New York Ballet has canceled their season till 2021, September of 2021. And the thought process behind that is that 2021, if you're a dancer, that really takes away most of your potential of your career, because Tom, now you're Tom Source. I know that you're familiar with dancing because your daughter's a dancer, and so is your wife. I mean, what is the average dancer, that's doing ballet for the Met?
They're early 20s, Jan.
Yeah. So
yeah, we have a couple of friends who are at New York City Ballet now, and they're all on hiatus and they're doing videos, but the principals are on salary. Some of the main core is getting a stipend, but most people are laid off.
Yeah. And
it's a 1.5 year loss of their career, and their career might be 7 to 10 years, maybe on a good day.
Yeah, they're lucky. So we are very fortunate that, even though time is ticking by and a lot of us might feel like our life is being stolen, we still have plenty of time left, and we still are able to do what we love to do. And that's really, I always say I'm making the best of a bad situation. And that's really how we should all look at it, as, doing the best we can for ourselves and for those around us, because it's tough time. Normally, historically speaking, we're going into November in the touring business. It's always very slow. So, this is not an unusual time for it being slow. What the unusual time is that there is no real work, but people are making the best of a bad situation. I see people going out and doing stages, putting up stages outside, doing, distance shows. Everybody seems to be wearing a mask now in the shows that we go to. Las Vegas is starting to come back a little bit. So things are starting to transpire a little bit, but there was an article, speaking of the ballet, and it's on the other end of the scale, that the brothels in Nevada are now up in arms because they think they're being unfairly singled out, because the governor of Nevada won't let the brothels open up again. So everybody's got their problems.
That's outrageous.
Hey, Jan.
There's going to be a link in the chat. Yes.
So my daughter has been talking to some old people she toured with for 10 years. And next week, Feld is starting when the ice show's back. Next week starts in Dallas for like 2 weeks. And then they go to San Antonio. and they've got it to where they're selling tickets as family pods in the arenas around this pod thing, and they're touring with a COVID, medical staff, whatever, that's 2 to 3 times a week of testing within the people, the quarantine, and how they're traveling, tour them between cities. So if we see how that goes and how they sell, it might be, to start back to touring.
That would be wonderful. I mean, here in Las Vegas, there's a guy named Reverend Horton Heat. He's a rockabilly kind of guy. And he seems to be doing shows, and he seems to be, he's doing multiple shows, and people are coming in, they're keeping the room small, but he seems to be making some money. So that's, that it's better than what like Citibank is doing right now. And Citibank is doing this, they're sponsoring streaming of Meghan Trainor, Carrie Underwood, CJ Wallace, One Republic. So there's opportunities now for people to make some money performing, because if they're doing it for Citibank, I am positive that Citibank is paying them. I can't imagine that they're not. And also, I don't know about your municipalities, but here in Las Vegas, they've got grants. I think they just had a $20 million grant for the small businesses that need some money. So there are things that are going. I mean, there are some positive things. And, I would think that right now, one of the things that I'd like to bring Bobby in right now. And Bobby, why don't you talk a little bit about what's going on with you?
Well, I've been, hey everybody, I've been doing some COVID compliance. I did a commercial shoot in Seattle, which was the second event I did. First one I did was for when we did Make It Red. And I mean, basically you're an adult hall monitor for the most part. I mean, it's an important job. I mean, you are checking people in, you're making sure that people are scanned properly, that people are complying, that they're wearing their mask. I mean, it's a new paradigm. I try to do it with a little bit of humor and a little bit of kindness, because none of us really like to be told what to do, which is probably why we all started doing this. And it's been good. I'm also doing a drive-in show. I did last weekend, and we've got this weekend another one at a driving range in the Bay Area. And they set up a small stage, and cars drive in, and people with pickup trucks sit in the back, and they weren't supposed to get out of the car. But I mean, look, people are having a good time. I think the promoter's making a little bit of money. I mean, there was a name act. We had Major Lazer, who was certainly a named EDM act. And I think they did like 350 cars. So they charge $100 a car. I don't really know what the economics are. There wasn't any sponsorship, but I mean, it's good to see people working. And on another note, I also was just traveled to do a Pentatonix private show. We did a show at a naval base in Maryland at the Naval Academy for the midshipmen, about 1,500 people. Everybody was distanced in their own spot. I mean, again, it's Pentatonix and it's the Navy, so wouldn't work anywhere else. And they actually put a chair down at each spot once they measured it out. And the chairs never ended up being weapons or being thrown, which I was worried about. And they had a great time. The band had a good time. So, I mean, I think there's some hope. I had a conversation with Stuart, who was on today, and we were talking about what's going to happen on next week. And, I think everybody ought to really consider what may or may not happen, depending on who takes office, how it affects our business. But I agree with you, Jan. There's definitely uptick of shows, and people want to play and people want to hear shows. I think it's going to be a long time before we're back to what our normal is, because, traveling by bus, larger crowds, city to city, day in, day out, when you go in to do one show, you can be very focused on what all the specifics are, how you're going to get there, when people are going to get tested and so on, and how to stay safe as you go on day to day. And we all know what the grind is, at least the touring people on this do. I think we need to be careful to not let our guard down.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned Stuart Ross. So Stuart, it's really great to have you in the room.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Probably from the days of the performance summits, but I evidently we go back even further than that. My very first job in the production world was working for a company called Road and Show Magazine on the Gower Gulch lot, and we really need to talk about this Gower Gulch. It was something very, very special. And Stuart had a collection of magazines from the old days, the early 70s, of Road and Show. And he commented to me that, hey, I saw your name on the mast. There is the Road and Show, So, but been around a really, really long time, almost as long as I have, if not longer. There you go. Look at that. And there's my name and my name in print. So I've been around a long time. But Stuart, tell us a little bit about what you do and, how everybody.
Well, a lot of you guys know me as a longtime tour manager and tour accountant. And some of you know me from my festival days, Coachella and Lollapalooza and Stagecoach. But I transitioned into management. I was at Red Light for 9 years, and I just left and went out on my own, took a couple of the clients with me. I still kind of keep my finger in the festival world. Oddly, I'm working on a festival project now. Obviously, it's for a year from now, but it's a K-pop festival. So, you do what you can. Trying to produce a TV show with one of my clients. Try to figure out how to make money, for both myself and my clients. Because it may seem ridiculous, but the talent is having as hard of a time, if not harder, than we are. Because quite frankly, our clients are people that live above their means. They have multiple houses, they have multiple marriages. They live a lifestyle that's only sustainable if there's money coming in constantly. And so when this shut down, it's hurting them also, which leads to when it opens up, they're going to take as many shows as they possibly can. So who knows when it's going to open? I don't know, and you don't know. But I fully believe that it's going to be a massive recovery. The problem is, I don't know when that is.
Well, I agree with you, and I'm sure everybody in the room agrees with you that right now there are 4 or 5 major companies working on a vaccine, and I like the way they're handling this vaccine aspect of it. So it's going to be real. We're not going to be afraid to take it. I'll give you an example. I took my flu shot yesterday, and I take a pneumonia shot because when you get a little older in life, they want you to take these shots. And I mean, hey, a lot of people say, well, I won't take a flu shot. Well, I took a flu shot and I haven't had the flu in a while. So, vaccines do work. You just have to have confidence in the vaccine, right?
Well, listen, they have certain effectiveness levels. I remember getting a shingles vaccine, and then I got shingles. And I came in, they said, oh, it's only 25% effective. It's like, well, that was a waste of my time. Listen, vaccines are going to come out. We don't have any idea what the distribution plan is going to be, but I don't think it's going to be first come, first serve.
No, it won't.
It's going to be first responders.
Yeah.
I mean, there hopefully is going to be some leadership in how this stuff is distributed.
Yeah, I know all the states are starting to get involved in how they're going to get taken care of on their share. But one thing about the shingle shot, they've come up with a new shingle shot called Shingrix, and they say that is much more effective. So if you might want to look into that.
I recently got that, and if you've never had shingles, get a shingles vaccine. It's really no fun.
It's painful for sure. It's painful for sure. something that's not painful for sure. We have a special guest, Daniela Peters here from Rat Sound is in the room. And, she's got the greatest accent you've ever heard. And she's on her way to England, actually. So, it's good to have you. When are you leaving for England?
Not for another week and a half, just for a little while. But yeah, you've invited me every week during COVID, and I'm so sorry. It's like the first I've ever logged on. So here I am, and hi, and thank you.
Good to have you. Very, very good to have you. And she was saying to me that this is an opportunity for her because a lot of people now are working from home. And, so you actually now have an opportunity to go and be in a different place than you would normally be. Like, for example, Tina, and who works for SoundBroker, she's in Los Angeles right now. Historically speaking, she would always have had to come to the office. I would never let anybody who was working for me not come into the office for the synergy. But it seems now, with the way we're doing our communications with Slack, with the VoIP, with Zoom, with Skype, where there's so many different ways to stay in touch with one another, that all of a sudden it is acceptable, so that you don't have to be in the office. So that is one of the better angels of this particular thing. But I think that if we had it our way, I think everybody would like to be back at the office. I think that, and have the synergy of being together with one another.
I was going to be farther away from you.
Okay.
I think there is something nicer about being in the office, and the only reason I can do it is because I'm managing the sales and the installs that we're still continuing to do. Thank you. So, but we've definitely had our teething problems of, getting everybody together, because it just, even simple things, there's something nice about having that face-to-face value. Even if you do get the opportunity to work from home, in my opinion, it's just nicer to be in the office.
Yeah, but think about all the money you're saving on dry cleaning. I mean, really think.
And gas in Los Angeles.
Anyway, to go back to Bobby, you were talking with me, you were talking about earlier about the compliance officer. And I know that Tina took some advice from, because when I first heard about it, I think you were on Scoville's show, and then you mentioned about, so why don't you talk about a little bit about that? So people who are out there right now, well, because everybody here is in the sound business or the lighting business or production, and what you've done for yourself is an opportunity for people to get working. So why don't you let's get into the details of the compliance officer.
Me, Bobby?
That's you.
Yeah, you take, there are numerous courses to take, and it's good to continue learning about it. So I try to read everything I can. I try to have a lot of conversations. Unfortunately, I think that COVID is going to be with us for a while. And I mean, I bring into, so my job basically is, as I get hired, is to first, as far as I see it, and again, it's sort of a new industry, is to help them mitigate what they're sending out to everybody, how people are people going to be tested? Some do the big TV productions do it. Some people are tested every 3 days. I know some production test people every day. And you really need to find out what the production wants. So for instance, the commercial I did in Vegas, in Seattle, no one was tested. It was on where we shot was under construction, was a new building. So the scanning was handled by the construction company. But basically, I'm helping mitigate how people are going to get in the door, what they're going to be told before they get there. And then for me, I do a talk with everybody every day, and it turns into a little bit of a pep talk. And I say, I'm going to ask you to wear your mask. I'm going to ask you not to gather in clusters. Everybody, when they get a minute from pushing a case or taking a shot, everybody likes to talk. I mean, we are for many of us, this is a social network kind of business, right? I mean, it's not like just going to the office. So, and even in the office, people do the same thing. So it's mitigating that, keeping people, compliant, reminding people to wear their mask. I mean, everybody drops it down below their chin, or As the day wears on, the mask is less effective. It's stretched. It falls below your nose. And I mean, really, it's just keeping people safe, reminding them to keep apart. And sometimes we clean things. We might manage a cleaning crew. I mean, in all honesty, catching COVID from touching a table, it would have to be a perfect storm. You'd have to touch it. They'd have to be very sick, which is a limited amount of time, even when they have it. You would have to touch it. You would either have to touch your nose or somewhere on your face. But anyway, it's still a matter of keeping it clean. Catering is a whole new thing to monitor because, buffets are gone. Where we were, we had hot food, but there were servers behind plexiglass. Everyone was handed a box. Everything was packaged. And no one was able to sit together unless they happened to be like a true couple. Or they lived together and they were in the same bubble. And, then again, people are taking a break. They want to talk to each other when they're eating. But it's also as mundane as reminding people, hey, you're done eating. Can you please put your mask on? And, I probably get a little annoying at the end, but I don't really, I try to do it with grace and dignity and letting people know that, we're all really fucking lucky to be back working. And if this is what it takes, this little thing that we have to learn and that we have to change, yes, the masks suck. You can't breathe after a while. You find that when you get home after a day, used to be your shoes, the first thing you took off, go, oh God, I can relax. Now it's like getting in your car, the mask comes off, or you can get a breath of air. So it's just different. But I mean, I honestly, I enjoy it. For the first time in, 30 years, I'm not in charge of anything but a small department. So I go home at night. The phone doesn't ring. I get there in the morning. I have my job. If the audio doesn't work, I'm sure one of you guys would fix it. It's not really my responsibility. So I'm enjoying being laser focused in one area. I always kind of wondered what that would be like all this time that I've been tour manager or production manager, and you're involved in everything. So for me, it's healthy, and it's definitely necessary. I mean, as you get into what's going on in television, where especially in shoots where there's a lot of people without masks on, you're keeping people in zones. I mean, listen, I think it's one way for us to get back to work. I think the next step, which no one's really doing, is COVID complying an audience. Because as it is now, the audience that we're attending to, it's drive-in, they're not supposed to get out of their cars, but most of them have gotten out of their cars. And if they show up in a pickup truck, they sit in the back. Then there is a beer garden, which it's all open air, so it's definitely safer. But people line up, and it's not our job in this instance to deal with the public, right? Because there's a whole different set of liability and all the rest of that. The public signs a different waiver. They're not screened when they come in. They're in their own car. But, for instance, I noticed that. So I would say to the promoter, you're having a problem there. Because obviously, if it gets shut down, whether it's because of backstage or the audience, it all affects future shows. And, my hope is that more of these drive-ins happen, more outdoor safe distance shows happen. Maybe as it progresses, maybe some of us that are doing COVID compliance, and I've just thought of this, actually, it's stimulated me to think about it, is how do we deal with the audience? Like, whether it's a theater or an arena. I mean, obviously, the more people you get, the more space you have. In some ways, it's good, but in other ways, it's more to control. But I don't know that anyone's really thought about how the audience can be controlled and how they can be educated. And I mean, because really, they're paying to be there now, right? Everyone else, you're paying. So having somebody tell them what to do or guide them or enforce the mandate is one thing, because if they don't, they can be sent home. But with the audience, it's an interesting spin. I mean, if there was, I mean, again, it's another expense, but if there were, you know, a certain per capita number of COVID compliance people for the audience, the same as there was for backstage, might it become safer to have a few more people in, you know? I mean, it's really a wonder, you know. In Washington State where I was, all the restaurants are open, people are sitting, you know, they're not even really limiting the capacity. I went to get takeout a couple of times and I'm like, wow, all these people, they're not wearing masks and they're eating, because when you're eating, you're really expelling. If you're sick and you're at a table with 4 people and they're eating and they don't have their nose or their mouth off, think about it. A little cough while you're eating, if you're shedding, which is when you're most contagious, it's very easy for other people to contract. So I don't know. I don't believe it's any less, but it being out there in the real world and having done these shows and seeing that humans are getting together gives me some kind of hope. Doesn't make me want to sit in a crowded restaurant right away. And vaccines, you're right, will change everything. But I'm finding a lot of satisfaction in doing this right.
Cool. That's really, it's interesting. I'm sure people have questions for you. And before
I have a whole list of questions.
Oh God, you again. You always ask me questions.
That I'd like to, you mentioned that there's numerous ways of becoming a compliance officer. Could you run down some of those so that people can, who are,
yeah, I'll try. I'm on my iPad, so I can't really, what I'd like, I can send you a whole list of things. I mean, you know, OSHA has a test, John Hopkins has a course. I'll look up the other, I mean, there are numerous tests you can take and courses. Some of them are a few hours. You can take a test in COVID tracing. I mean, basically, but it is purely, honestly, no matter what you read, it's not, your job really isn't to be a scientist. I mean, it's pure common sense. I mean, okay, you're going to come in the building, you know what questions you're asking people, or they fill the form out. You know, if they're sick, there's a protocol. If they have a temperature, there's a protocol for them to sit down or go home. I mean, in California, where I don't know that it's a law yet, but let's say that I'm a COVID officer on a film shoot and somebody is really sick. I mean, it would be my job actually to shut the production down. It'd be my job to go to the producer and say, you have 2 people that are coughing and sneezing and they've just went and got tested and they're sick. You have to shut the production down, similar to what football does or baseball does when they find someone that's sick. So haven't had to do that yet. Did have to send someone home from work the other day who happened to be the lead tech, and we told him he couldn't come in. Had a temperature slightly above 100. So they sat down for 15 minutes. They came back. It was higher actually when they came back. So we sent them away.
Wow. Now that's, what if they're asymptomatic? How do you know?
You don't. I mean, part of it is the honor system, because when people come in, they're either asked questions like, do you feel sick? But actually, sorry to answer your question, you don't, because they don't know that they're sick. So, I mean, if they're in the right mode, you might catch that they have a temperature, but I mean, likely not. So hence all the more reason that them wearing a mask and them everybody keeping distance is all the more important, because the mask helps to mitigate people breathing on you. It doesn't really prevent you from breathing in something that's in the air. And something that's in the air, the aerosol, where it sits in the air, there has to be a whole lot of vocal activity with people that aren't wearing masks for enough of a cloud to develop to where you could walk into it without a mask and get sick, but it's possible.
But now
it also depends on your constitution, right? I don't think Keith Richards will ever get COVID.
Aren't you working with the Pentatonix, and aren't they just a vocal group?
Yeah, we just traveled. So there were, there's 5 principals that, all sing. And we only had a very small crew. There were only 5 or 6 of us that went. So the rule is in a live performance that when the group is on stage singing, I make sure even security by the front of the stage is at least 6 feet away, right? And that they're all wearing face shields and masks, of course. And that anyone that's on stage or has to come in direct contact with any of the group, and it would be the same thing on TV with an actor, is wearing a face shield. TV, it's a little different. Everybody's severely tested. We were all tested when we left. So the monitor person, the playback, the tech that was on stage, me when I needed to be on stage, in addition to the mask, I wore a face shield because now there were people singing and they weren't wearing masks. And even though they had been tested and we were sure they're clean, that's another thing. Even though you're tested on Tuesday, most the full test, you can wait 3 to 4 business days. That full test that's expedited is typically known as a concierge test, and usually get those results back in 24 hours. But both of those tests go to a lab. The other quick tests that you can get at CVS or drive through numerous places are a little bit different. There's 2 of them. There's the Abbott. They're both done by Abbott Labs, and they're really only 50 to 80% accurate. You get fair amount of false positives and a fair amount of false negatives, but it's better than nothing.
Yeah, for sure. Kenny has some questions for you. Kenny?
Okay, so first question is, when you've got a big group of people that you're the COVID compliance officer for, how big, how many people is there sort of a known limit on how many people you can be responsible for?
It's a good question. Typically I've always worked with 2 people because you can't all be in one place at once. And, you want to always have somebody on the floor watching, and you don't catch everything, even if you're one person. So the event I did in Seattle was about 70 crew. And it took 2 of us definitely just to sort of back and forth and to watch them. But I guess if you were going to put a number on it, one person could probably monitor 30 people, I suppose, if you were monitoring that group.
But there's no sort of written limit. There's no laws about that or anything.
Good, but you know what? I'll write it down because it's a good thing moving on about how many people you're supposed to be able to look after. And of course, it depends on how spread out they are. In an arena load-in, if you think about that, if you were really wanting to cover it right, you'd probably have somebody on the dock, and you'd probably have someone on the stage, and you'd probably have somebody wandering, maybe catering, right? Because those are the hot spots, right? And on top of it, you need 1 or 2 people to check everybody in, because the check-in, could take a while depending on how it's handled. Some of it's touchless now. So they show you a QR code that scans into your phone, you take their temperature, they're gone. But even with 1 person doing that with a line of 100 people, it still takes about 40 seconds, right? So that can add an hour to the call.
Right. So I've got a bunch of questions, but let me just run through them real quick, and you answer what you think you can answer. So, and I'll tell you the most important one first is, let's say I, did the training, paid the $50, did that online training. The most important question is, how do you get the gigs? But then the other question is, how do you negotiate the pay scale? The other question is, I've heard there's a lot of film industry gigs because the film industry is going gangbusters. They're working a lot, but they're employing a lot of COVID compliance officers. What do you know about that? And then are there different classes that you can take, or is that $50 one the one?
Okay, so your first one was rate?
Well, how do you get the gigs, and how do you negotiate the rate?
For me, both of these gigs were word of mouth. I took the course because everybody else was taking it. I thought that I would go into like a register and I would start getting phone calls, like, because that's how I've been fortunate enough throughout my career. I was never very good at calling. I might call about a gig if I got it, but I always hated cold calling or sending resumes out because I was always disappointed. So I just waited for the phone to ring. I think you can be proactive about it. They are definitely more compliant in film and television. And the money is quite good. I believe that depending on which course you can take, there are registers and there's also word of mouth. And I've gotten these 2 gigs, one because I did a gig when we did the Make It Red thing. And I was at Bill Graham Civic, and I ran into a friend that was getting ready to produce this commercial, corporate commercial. And they actually called me we talked, and I tried to turn them onto this app that I've been using with another coworker. And I tried to get them hooked up with the app, and they called us on a Monday and we flew on Tuesday. They weren't even planning to have a compliance. And, they had to convince the client that, look, you're going to have all these people there. You got to have someone to control this. And in the end, they saw the need. So I'll get more work from that, I imagine. There are registers you can do. And I imagine that, it's through people, and again, the one course I took said that there was a register of people to be called, but I never got anything from it. Honestly, I never followed up on it. And
hey, so here's another
Bay Area.
Let's talk about negotiating your pay scale and what kind of pay scales they're getting, and also about the equipment involved. Like there's the thermometer and there's clipboards and other things that you've got to have. Do you provide all that, or does someone provide that for you?
I came in with my own signage. Sometimes the client provides it. In the case of the first one I did, I didn't have time to put a kit together. So now I've got a kit, with signage, face masks that the client either provides or we provide as part of our deal. So on the table, when you come up to see us, there are a couple of temperature scanners like this, masks for people that don't show up with the right mask, which usually the production would provide. Some productions are doing it where you have to wear their mask, and they can mandate that, which actually to me makes sense because it's more uniform. People like to wear bandanas and gaiters, which we don't allow. You don't allow the one with thing. But in any case, moving on to the rate, people are, I hear, and I haven't made this rate, but I hear at the top end, especially in film and television, the leads are billing out at like $1,500 a day. No lie. Now, I haven't been offered that, but I would tell you that even half that much is lucrative, especially if you're doing corporate or you're negotiating a 10-hour day, and past 10 is overtime, past 12 is double time. So it's turned out to be, for me, almost road pay.
Wait, I got to say something here. Ken Porter, are you there, Ken Porter? Yeah, okay, there you go. Okay, I thought you were napping. Sorry.
You should have shaved his eyebrows or something.
I was just dressing my...
Get the Sharpie out.
Yeah, Sharpie, right?
Late where he is, he's on the East Coast time, and I'm really, we're really fortunate to have.
That's what we need. We need a veritable Sharpie to draw on people as they fall asleep on the Zoom calls.
Well, what I think is a great idea if we could draw on the masks. And somebody told me that there was a.
I got to tell you, masks are a lucrative business, man. People can't sell enough of them. There's all kinds of high-end designers make masks. People bling their masks.
So Bobby, you mentioned signage. What kind of signage? It comes to. I guess check in here or something, or stay 6 feet apart, or
social distance. Just map, signs about compliance. Keep 6 feet apart. wash your hands every hour and a half.
And do you or does your client provide the hand sanitizer, like the liquid stuff?
Well, again, it would depend on your deal. In this case, for this drive-in, we provided everything because when we got there, there was nothing there. In the case of the commercial, they were very well prepared. They had cases of it ordered. They had cleaner. And there's certain, as you take the course, there's certain cleaners you can use. It should be compliant on the N list of the FDA has a list and a rating, and each cleaner has a barcode. Some of it, is compliant, or probably the wrong word, in cleaning up the bacteria. Most things you'll see say 99.9% will clean up the bacteria. And what I'm finding is a lot of it is making people comfortable, right? I mean, keeping them aware, but also comfortable too, because, if somebody's really sick and they come to work sick, maybe they don't know it and they cough because they don't know it, and someone else happens to just catch it. I mean, that's the thing. Once that's happens,
how it goes. Yeah.
And honestly, you just, as careful as you are, you just don't know, especially when you start reaching into places where there's live band singing, people don't have a mask on. I mean, you've watched it a million times that something wrong with the monitors and the band comes up and he's talking in the ear of the tech or in the ear of the monitor guy. I mean, that is, and then trying to do your work with the face shield on, it sounds different. It just does. I mean, you got this, it's not over your ears, but it's a barrier in front of you. And the monitor guy's going, do I have to do this? I said, you do. Yeah, I'm sorry, you do. And maybe, because your eyes are very sensitive. And again, no one wants to get sick.
It's interesting you should say the two people in the room right now, Chris Carlton and Ron Shorens, they both have gotten involved with the PPP aspect of this. Chris has got these machines that you could walk in. It's like a tunnel that you walk in and it sprays you. And Ron was talking about these microphone covers last week. You might want to mention those. Why don't we start with Ron and tell him what you were telling us last week about these the microphone covers.
Yeah, they're basically windscreens, only they come pre-done, so you can then do. We were doing a big university function and the university frosh weeks, which are normally massive parties. Originally the university we were working with was going to go all online, and then they decided not to. So they ended up having here in Canada, you can have events all over the place as long as it's not more than 50 people at your event. So they were doing roughly 10 different sites for karaoke stuff. So that became a huge issue. So what we ended up doing was we sourced these windscreens that they come pre-done with not like a cleaner, but they're all pre-done so that they're sanitary. So basically the person sings. When they're done, you take the windscreen off, you put another one on. I mean, you're going through hundreds of these things. So we've been using those. We had a country awards show that we did. We did the same thing with that. So, and with that, we basically said in rehearsals, we said, look at, you're using these windscreens. When you're done, take it with you. And then, when you come back for the show, that you've got your windscreen. So there's not always, a million of these things around stage. And it worked really, really well. And so, yeah, we've been doing that on all the drive-in shows as well. I mean, the drive-in shows are a little bit different because we try and get people to bring their own mic, bring their own stuff whenever possible. So, and if you can't, then we go with that kind of idea.
And Chris, you were also involved in some hardware that you showed a picture of it a couple of weeks ago. I wonder if that would be something that Bobby, as a compliance officer, would be able to have installed.
Yeah, Bobby, I think that this it looks like a phone booth. You're basically walking into this thing that could be it has a temperature sensor and takes a picture of the person that's being checked in and gives you an okay and lets you go into this chamber that you stay in there for 5 seconds. It's hydrochloric acid that is the fog that's in there, and it's totally harmless but very effective and relatively inexpensive to use. I mean, I think it's for about 1,000 people, it's going to run probably about $500 to run everybody through that. I got to plug in here. I'm losing power. Unfortunately, I don't have my.
What does the cleaner do to a person?
Absolutely nothing. It just it's
But I
been
mean,
used.
What's its purpose?
Been used for decades. So if you're positive, it's not going to do anything at all. If you have anything on you, then it's going to purify. It's going to kill any viruses that are on you. But if it's something that's in your lungs and you're going to cough it out, it's not going to help with that situation at all. But it does have the temperature sensor to start with, so it's a really good way to check everybody in. We use it for
it's touchless, I guess. So you're
we
not
use
having
bullshit.
people aren't getting close, and you don't have to.
And it's something that could be at the check-in door for the crew, so to speak.
It's pretty quick. I mean, that's. Yeah. And does it connect the picture it takes of you to the questionnaire you filled out, and keep track of you? Because
I don't know about a questionnaire being filled out.
Well, because typically when people come in, they're either asked a series of questions or they filled something out, and often production, the venue or production wants people to sign a waiver. And the waiver states that you are working in an area, people might have COVID, you might catch it, you might get sick, you're there at your own risk. I mean, it's very interesting. There's not really insurance for, there is I've been told now I can buy insurance to protect me from someone being, suing me over COVID if I'm a compliance officer and someone on the set gets sick, well, I certainly might be named in the fact, well, he was the compliance officer. I mean, people sue each other over anything these days. So
Bobby, you have insurance to do this gig?
I have insurance. I'm working for somebody else, so I didn't need insurance to do this gig.
Right.
And but it's you can't really sue anyone for getting COVID. It wouldn't not hold up. Right. And there have not really been any cases. But I'd be interested in what this is. I mean, I like the fact that it's touchless. I'm not so sure that the chemical really is relevant because the virus is not, I mean, it has to be on a pretty, for you to get it from being touched, typically it has to be a fairly recent on the surface, and it has to primarily be a body fluid. Like if your hands are sweating a lot and you leave a pool of sweat, well, that's bodily fluid. But if you just touch a seat and even if you're contagious, someone else touches it and it doesn't really last on clothes. I don't know, but I'd be interested in seeing what the booth looks like. Is something you're manufacturing?
I told it, yeah. I mean, this is being manufactured in many parts of the country. There's a company set up here in Miami that's doing it, and I can share this information for you. I sent it in a link a couple of weeks back. Unfortunately, I don't have my computer with me right now, or I do it right now, but it'll have to wait until tomorrow.
Well, we can touch base offline. I'd be very interested.
Yeah, it's that, and it's they also this same HOCl is being used in like portable fog machines to just fog the stage, the equipment as it comes in. I mean, yeah, it's becoming less and less apparent that touching something and touching your face is not really what's spreading this virus, but the fact still remains that you clean everything down. You disinfect everything. And what this does, it can do an entire room for you as well with these, with walking around with this portable fogger. So
yeah, I'm associated with the Gallagher staging. I'm part of the Gallagher family. And Joey Gallagher has something called Ready for Doors, which that's what they do, is they disinfect spaces.
Right. I mean, the airline is doing something similar to their aircraft, but they're using a different chemical to do it.
Are they doing it when people are on board?
The airlines are not doing it when people are on board.
Yeah, there's not.
No.
Yeah, it's interesting because I wonder with a continuing flight, not even everybody gets off. Like I was on a couple of Southwest flights, and when the flight stopped in the first place, there were still people sitting there, and they did not look like they were going through and cleaning the plane.
Wow.
I think they only clean the planes at night. And it's an interesting thing, okay, about cleaning the planes. So I got a letter from American Airlines, and believe it or not, American Airlines, I'm going to read this to you. Join us as we take you behind the bar from the comfort of your living room. You will be able to protect your bartending skills alongside Tony Abu Ganin as he walks through the basics of cocktail making and explains how you can implement these tips at home. And that's from American Airlines. So they are now giving bartending lessons at home. So that's kind of an interesting thing that American Airlines is now offering to their customers,
Jan, for American in Charlotte, every inbound plane is taken out of service and goes over to the hangar, and they replace it with a different plane. So, but Charlotte's one of the larger hubs. So every plane that comes in actually goes out of service and gets cleaned before it comes back into service. So it may not be at every stop, but it's at least when they're coming through Charlotte.
Now, Brian, you ADA, how is that being affected right now in what Bobby's talking about? Are your people moving into that area as well?
Well, there's some interesting concepts with that because the hearing impaired now are really suffering because face mask does no longer allow reading of lips. And so there's some concerns. And then with all these shields that we put up, just like Bobby was talking about the monitor engineering not being able to hear as well through the shield, all the shields and protective devices that we put up are impacting people with hearing impairments. And it's also impacting people with wheelchair or mobility issues because they can't get to the clear open space. The Department of Justice is supposed to be coming out with some guidelines in the next couple of months, but it's really being left up to the courts on what's suitable and what's not.
You've got something you're showing there?
Here's the windscreen. Comes in a sealed bag, and you just put it on. It's ugly. It's uglier than sin. I mean, if guys that normally use real windscreens, this thing looks like an old sock, and it kind of smells like it too. But it's an antibacterial windscreen. You can get them on Amazon. They sell them by boxes of 100, and you just you buy them, and it gives you a bit of a fighting chance. But anyway, we bought thousands of them.
I bet.
What's the brand name on that?
Hey, Bobby, I got a question for you.
Yes, sir.
They're called Raton. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's Stuart.
So you're working for the most part, other than the live show world, except for the handful of parking lot shows that you're doing.
Right.
And so I can understand the compliance for people who are working. It's like, listen, you want to work, you want to get paid, you're going to have to go through these procedures, or you can't work. I'm wondering what the dynamic is going to be with the audience, because there's a certain number of people right now, and I think it varies from geographical area to geographical area, who have absolutely no interest in compliance and social distancing, in mask wearing. We all kind of know what we're talking about there. So what happens if you have an audience member that says, no, I'm going to do what I want? Is it then up to security to say, you're out? What's going to happen? What's your take on this?
It's very interesting. I mean, and we just started obviously talking about it, and it's made me really think about, that maybe the next step for all the hundreds of roadies that are signing on to COVID compliance, how do we deal with the audience? In different circumstances, when they first started doing the drive-ins, I know that when Live Nation did the drive-ins, and I'd have to maybe follow up a little bit with Mark Elfenbaum or maybe Chris Weathers, who did those shows, they were scanning people's temperature when they came in through the car window. These scanners work right through glass, evidently. I didn't do it. So basically, if there was an audience member who had a temperature in the car, they weren't allowed in. And the language that went out to them, like we said on the back of the ticket, or there was a waiver for the show, the outdoor show I'm doing, that said, our show said you may be tested coming in, and if you show a temperature, you won't be allowed in. And considering that in the driving event I'm doing here, it wasn't much of an issue in theory, because people were not supposed to get out of their cars, which they ended up doing. And they also ended up going to a beer garden. So I think it's a matter of that, if you travel in Asia now, or I was traveling in Asia as COVID was starting to happen, you're scanned before you got into the airport. And if you had a temperature, you weren't even allowed in the airport. It was like, nope, this is security. You don't get in. I think it has to be the same thing. I mean, there's been talk of trying to develop such a quick instant test that everyone in the audience on their way in would get this test. I mean, there are phone booths. It's funny, I started looking up phone booths when other gentlemen brought it up. And I found that there's actually testing booths they're trying to pick up, which would even be faster. But I think you got to mitigate the audience. Now, the one I'm doing, we're not mitigating the audience. Some people are, but yeah, if they agree to come in and they agree to be tested, and they agree in writing that if they don't wear a mask, they don't comply, they don't keep social distance, they don't follow the rules, they can be ejected. It's a nightmare for security, though. And think about how close security have to get to those people. So that's a whole other area.
The interesting thing is our least experienced security people are at the front doors, from the ticket takers to when people are seated, and they're not security, they're crowd control.
Right.
So if the rule is, let's say it's a theater, and let's say it's socially distanced, where, there's pods of seats, and don't try and sit in a seat you're not assigned to. Somebody does that, you have a whole different level of security that you're going to have to hire to, either eject people or make them compliant. It's going to be a mess.
We do a ton of drive-in shows. I've done probably a dozen now drive-in shows, and obviously I'm in Canada, so it's a little bit different. We've only had 10,000. Well, not only, I mean, one death is too many, but we're up to 10,000 deaths. So, I mean, compared to what's happening on your side, it's a little bit different. But here, if you're in a hot zone, which is Toronto, sort of Quebec, certain areas of Quebec, those are basically the hot zones that are left here. You have to have police on your site, and everybody is fully aware that if you get out of your car for any reason other than going to the washroom, it's a $500 fine. And there's no grace, there's no nothing. If you get out of your car and they determine that you're just goofing off, you get a $500 fine. It really does curb a lot of that stuff. We did do an air show, which was a little bit different because the area was physically bigger for an air show. So they, instead of having modeling for a 6-foot by 12-foot vehicle, and then that space in between them, and then another one beside it. that then warrants you have to stay in the car. Whereas with the air show, what they did was they used fencing and they created a pod with your vehicle in the middle of the pod. And then you could take your lawn chairs and go outside of that, and you could not leave your pod. Same thing. So there was security there, but more so the police were there. If you left your pod, you would receive a $500 fine. And that really curbed a lot of the problem folks.
What we're seeing here is a lot of creativity on our side. You know, I mean, the production side is becoming very creative. Bobby, I've got a question for you regarding the testing. Do you have the tests yourself, the Abbott test?
No.
So how are the tests administered? Are they?
Well, I mean, again, that's not, I mean, I know there's companies that deal with from A to Z. I mean, I'm just an independent guy working for somebody else, but basically the test, what we did with Pentatonix, because I was involved in that, is we had a concierge service, go to rehearsal and give everyone an instant PCR test, which are a couple $100 each. So it's the proper test. It's just expedited in the lab and you get the results quickly. So, you know, I mean, that's, and I know, for instance, with MTV, they had something set up at Mount Sinai Hospital. So every 3 days, and they got paid for it. Anybody went, they went an hour before their call. They had to go every 72 hours. They went and everyone got tested. And you're talking, so there were probably numerous locations, but you're talking probably 400 people a day. Mm-hmm. And hopefully they're doing them in waves. So it's, you know, with a big production like that, it's huge to mitigate that.
I think it would be.
And expensive.
Now,
really expensive.
Really expensive.
Do the promoters pay for the test, or is that an artist's responsibility?
I don't think we've gotten to that point yet. I don't, you know, we're all, I mean, as far as the touring entity and even the live event, I mean, I think there's so many discussions going on amongst people as how we could take the next step. I mean, you know, we don't know how we'd all travel from city to city. I mean, like, you know, if you're traveling, for instance, if you're traveling in to do one show and you're going to stay in a hotel and everybody drives their own rental car and you can control how that group is tested and they all stay in their little bubble and they don't go out at night and so on and so forth. And then they go home. Well, that's certainly a lot easier than controlling what people are going to do when they're on the road and trying to travel from city to city. I think that's going to, and that testing will probably get better. Hopefully it will become less expensive. So, and will probably the instant test will become more accurate. So, I mean, you know, I guess I can envision that if it became something where, you know, let's say it did become like, okay, we're going to tour in times of COVID, right? Let's just say we're going to do that. So it could be as something as people get off the bus in the morning and they go through whatever quick test it's going to be. They get the results in, say, 15 minutes. So maybe you got to go back to the bus, you know, amongst your bubble. And, you know, everybody that comes in the building goes through the same process. I mean, you know, even with that, and even with, because you think even a theater show backstage and for the staff and everybody else, it's still, you know, well over 100 people, and that's a small show. An arena show, between the stagehands, the tour, the building staff, and the cleaners, I mean, you know, everybody's in each other's business. It could easily be over 300 people that you'd have to test.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. It's you know, next week, one of our members, Sean Sedlacek from Vox, he does a lot of the outdoor work for the Dodgers. And of course, they just won the World Series. So I am sure that he just did their drive-in, the pre-World Series drive-in when they were going to play. So I am sure he's doing their World Series events. And I'm going to bring him in the room and he's going to talk about what they had to go through, because I am sure that had to be a nightmare for him, from a standpoint of, doing an outdoor event for the Dodgers as they won the World Series, so all their fans could get together. I'm sure that is going to be an interesting story.
When is that supposed to be?
I'm not really sure the date, but I know that they're doing it. So they're, but he's the one who does. He just did their outdoor event for the pre-rally.
Well, they had a TV. They had a big LED wall outside Dodger Stadium for all the playoff games and the World Series games, and people could just go there. I'm not sure if they needed tickets or whatever, but that was just a thing. And they put up this huge LED wall for people to watch the games with.
Did people have to stay in their cars?
Yeah, the way they did it, the way I saw, what I saw was that it was in the round. The stage was in the middle, and everybody parked around it. So there were 4 sides. There were 4 sides to the stage. Each side had its own LED screen. So they can get the most amount of cars around that. But the challenge, of course, as everybody knows who's done the live shows, is that how many cars can you get in the area? You have to have space in between the cars and the people. And although I haven't seen many of them, I was just watching one of the political events of and it seemed like, well, even though he was encouraging them, to be safe. So yeah, when you get people around and for them to stay in the car while they're doing something is probably a lot more difficult than it appears on the outward surface.
Yep.
Also, one talking about not next week, but on the 11th, you guys all might know Marty Hom, but Marty has told me that he's going to come in and talk about what's going on. And at this point in time, of course, he's the tour manager for the Rolling Stones. And so he might have some insight to something that we don't normally know. And hopefully he'll have something to say that would be kind of interesting for us to glean. Anyway, who's got something else? Anybody have any more questions for anybody, or anybody that is there anybody that would like to say anything about anything?
Hey, I got a Santa Claus parade I'm doing. It's at the airport here. So what's happening is all the floats are lining up, but nobody's moving. All the cars, the people who are attending are driving by all the floats. So the car line is moving along. All the floats are stationary. So we're actually putting up like full stages. We've got a bunch of 100s going in. That obviously you couldn't open a 100 and drag it down the street normally, but since it's not moving, Bob's your uncle, you can do anything. So that's something, again, that's completely different, but the airport has said, yeah, let's do this. So there's literally, I think, 30 different floats that are all with Santa at the end. And then people are they're just driving by in their cars. And yeah, again, something completely different.
Yeah, well, Canada can do that. See, if we tried to do that here in the States, people would be going, no, we're not going to do that. And, oh, that's not good enough, and blah, blah, blah. The Canadians are so much better.
Just an
They're polite.
They do it at the zoo when you drive by for the Christmas decorations.
All right. Yeah. Just an FYI, the SL100, I believe, is 24 by 20, so it gives you a scope of how big it is, and he's putting out a bunch of them. So it's a pretty big event.
Yeah.
So did you hear what they're doing for the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade?
No. But if you hum a few bars of it, maybe one of us will know.
In what key? Okay. So so I heard through informed sources that the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade is happening, but no marching bands, and it's only for the street, the 34th Street from 6th to 7th Avenue, one block or something like that. And it's just going to have, the floats and things go down that one block, and musical performances that are all recorded and no marching bands. So they're trying to make something happen so they still get the revenue for the TV dollars, I guess, but it's not nearly what it usually is.
Yeah, like I said, everybody's being more creative than ever before, which is a really good thing, and we're all trying to do something, we're all trying to do something to make it for everybody, because people still need to be entertained. I mean, that's all there is to it. They do need to be entertained. And how much Netflix or Amazon Prime or whatever you watch, or, you say, well, You know, that is a lot of television I've been watching, a lot of television. Anyway, I really appreciate everybody coming. And you know, does anybody have anything else they want to say?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes, William.
Bill Furtick.
How are you, Bobby?
Bill Furtick. Wow. Hi, Bill.
Hi, Ken. So, I'm about to actually start doing some gigs in a theater a few days a week. They have 2,500 capacity, and I think they got state mandate to do 600 people, you know, in pods of 4. My question is, has anybody had any experience with UV for sanitizing objects, i.e. microphones and things? I mean, the course of action that we're going to take so far is those kind of condoms on mics, but the foam inside a microphone will absorb, you know, fluid from
Germs.
people's mouths.
Yeah,
So I can see that is a potential. Anybody have
you seen, Bill, have you seen the MT cases case that they're building? They've sold a bunch of them to venues, I've heard.
Oh, you mean
check it out.
Goes over the head of the microphone?
No, it's a road case that looks like a work box,
Right.
but it closes up tightly and securely, and you put all your stuff in there that you want to get sanitized, and then it's sanitized inside the case, and then you take it out, and it's all ready to go.
Yeah,
sanitized.
that's what I'm talking about. I mean,
MT cases, yeah.
A friend of mine who does sports audio, they have a little box, looks like a toaster oven or something. They put a few mics packs in there and use it. Does anybody know if that works?
Well, this is what I've been
Technology?
using. And I've been using this. This is Homemedics. It was actually designed for a cell phone, but the microphones fit right inside it.
All right.
You zip it, you hit a button, it takes about 30 seconds, and it blasts it with UV light. The reports out there, depending on who you test, UV doesn't hurt.
Right.
It's not always the confirmed that it does do all the kill. This one actually circulates the air around, and the big key with UV light is that light doesn't bend. So you got to have some sort of air movement with it to get to all the points.
Right.
Move it around.
Or the UV around the whole object.
Right. So I'm working with a daycare at our church, and we're using one that has to go into the room, but it has a motor to move the air, and it runs for 40 minutes, just circulating the air around. And that's what the hospitals use as well, is when they sanitize a room between patients. But
Right.
UV lighting can damage your skin or your body, so you got to make sure it's in an enclosed vehicle. This is actually from Homemedic, and it's USB portable, so I charge it up before I go out and just run the mics through it.
Right. Are there products for like CPAP machines and things like that that do the same similar thing?
Right. I mean, there's you got to watch who's putting UV out, because a lot of people are putting UV out and it's not the right bandwidth.
Right. This is why I asked.
So-
If you buy something that's $60, chances are you shouldn't bet your life on it, right?
Right. I mean,
Don't buy it at Costco.
Everybody's jumping on the UV bandwidth, but it's a very finite width of light.
Right.
I think we can trust that MT cases thing because those guys are not messing around, you know.
Right. Right. Bobby,
Wayne put a couple links to it in the chat.
Great.
Yeah, I know that the MT case has a timer, a safety switch that turns it off when you open the door. I just put up, I think they're around 25. Oh, it was a typo. I think they're around $2,500.
Right.
I won't guarantee it because I haven't. I don't know specifically, but I thought that's what I'd heard cost wise.
Right.
And I know they had them down the NBA bubble and whatever.
Now, speaking of the NBA bubble, Shure did a seminar or a Zoomcast like this with the people from Firehouse who were doing it for the microphones and the UV. And so you could probably just go up to Shure's webinar site and watch that, or if you know Firehouse, just call them up. And
Right. Yeah, Brian, we do.
You know,
So Bill, what theater is that?
So this is the Akron Civic Theater where I am. So I do IA work in the summertime at Blossom, but now since there's nothing else going on, and this theater is beginning and looking for a house position. So I'm,
good for you, man. That's
looking
awesome.
at, I mean,
That's a nice
Way
theater.
way better than what a lot of people are doing.
unemployment, right? So,
Yep.
Hey, Bill, I would suggest you wipe everything down, because one thing that I'm reading about the UVC is that it doesn't really work on porous surfaces.
Right. That's
so the inside of a microphone, I mean, even the inside of a microphone has porous surfaces, right? Especially inside the windscreen. So what we've been suggesting is that, the 58 comes off, you pull the foam out, or you soak the whole thing in soap and water like you've cleaned it. And I will tell you that all the sprays to use cleaning surfaces are fairly toxic if they're going to kill the bacteria. So what we also recommend is everything is wiped down.
Right.
And, there's a misnomer about the gloves too, because remember, you don't really clean the gloves. So once the gloves get dirty, you've got to take them off. As long as you keep your hands clean, with a wipe, with an alcohol wipe. I think the alcohol wipes are far better than anything.
Right. I mean, I don't plan on saying check 1, 2 anytime in the next few years. And I don't plan on touching the microphone if there is something out there that somebody's spoken, because I got to believe that, if somebody's contagious, that microphone is got to be a source.
Well, that would be the time to wear gloves and a face shield. And you're going to be around anybody, I think. Just protect yourself. Face shield, especially on stage, is important. And, you reach out to Upstaging. They've been making them. So What makes one evidently that if you wear a hat, it attaches to your hat. I haven't actually seen it, but, it's a challenge, man. It's a challenge wearing the mask and glasses, honestly.
Right.
All that adds to frustration, but be careful. It's sure good to see you, man.
Yeah, same here.
Me and Bill Fertig, we did some road time together with Third Eye Blind. We did some crazy situations. So it's
you too, huh, Bobby?
Third Eye Blind, 12 years.
I've done a few shows with Bill.
Good man.
To see you guys, and this is a great resource. Thank you.
I really appreciate you guys coming. Sure, because hey, look, it's a wonderful space, safe space. We're giving away really good, amazing tips, news. And it moves very fast. I mean, we've been doing this now for an hour and a half almost, and but I want to thank you very, very much for coming. Before we go, I want to introduce a new thought process to this group before we go, and I'm going to put Bobby on the spot, okay? And I'm going to preface it by this: every one of us in this room is not in this room by accident. We're in this business because this is what we love to do. We most of us don't have college education. Most of us have made a decision that this was our chosen vocation, not because we had to do it, but because we did it from our heart, right? And we all have some great stories. So Bobby, I want to put you on, because you were the one that was featured today. I want to put you on the spot, and I want to ask you this. You've been doing this for years. Is there any one item that, now that I asked you, that pops into your mind, other than being on the SoundBroker Mastermind RoundTable, of course, but that stands out head and shoulders above anything else you've done, that really is something that when you think about it, when you're on your deathbed, you're going to say, wow, I did that, or I experienced that. So take it away. Tell me, give us something.
Well, let's see.
Tell them about Philadelphia Lollapalooza, Bobby.
Okay, that's a good story. I work for Rage Against the Machine. I actually hadn't been on the road for a while because I've been running Universal Amphitheater. And I don't know, the very crowd in here, Rage Against the Machine, that was maybe their first tour. They were starting to get some notoriety. And there were 4 guys that just didn't give a shit about whatever rules we had established. And you know, from growing up in the 60s and the 70s and thinking of myself as a radical, I certainly had forgot that it was fun to break the rules. Well, these guys, you know, and they stood for something, and politically and rightfully so. It was the days of PMRC. So they came to me and they said, listen, we're going to go on stage naked, and we're going to put there's 4 of them, so they're going to write in Sharpie PMRC across their chest. And I said, so you're not going to play like any music, even when you're done or to begin with, and then stop? No, we're just going to go on stage. So we planned it all, and I set up the bus to like make a quick getaway. And I've been friends with Stewart 10 years at that point, but of course, and we're the opening act, so I don't say anything to him. Of course, I do the right thing by the guys I'm at.
And this is RFK Stadium?
RFK Stadium, one of the last shows in RFK Stadium. Lots of people there, hot sunny afternoon. They go on at 2 p.m. So they get the bright idea to do the PMRC in sort of red Sharpie. Well, you can't really see it in the sunlight, first of all. So when they get up there, no one really knows why they're there, right, to begin with. They don't say anything. They don't even tell anybody. So they go up there, you know, the bass and the guitar against the amp, massive feedback, and they're just standing there. And they were up there 2 minutes, and it's the longest 2 minutes I've ever seen in my life. So when it became apparent they weren't playing and they were naked, of course, the Philadelphia police came to me at the back, came to somebody at the back of the stage and said, who's in charge? I mean, they might have gone to RT, rest in peace, right? And RT points at me. And the guy says, well, you got to go up there and get them off. And I said, I'm not fucking going up there. I said, you want them off? You go get them off. So finally, they left the stage to turn the amps off. They went. No one was chasing them, so I didn't have to do a quick getaway in the dressing room, in the bus. And they all got back to the dressing room, and it was sort of anticlimactic. Of course, the other bands liked it. Most people said, well, why don't you play something? Why don't you announce what you were doing? No one really knew what you were up there for. And I go, and the best part of it for me was going into the production office, and I'm with Stewart. And Chopper was the production manager, again, friends for years. And they looked at me and they go, dude, why didn't you tell us? You know, I said, well, no, that the whole part was the surprise. And Stewart said, well, you know, we're not going to pay you. And I said, you know what, Stewart, I think it's worth to them the $250 they were going to get for this show. And that was it. That was a good, thanks for reminding me. Not that I forgot it, but that was really good.
Well, I think it's interesting that you're a COVID compliance officer right now, and that story was about the most unhygienic thing that had ever happened on the Lollapalooza stage.
Quite possibly, and there was some shit that went down on Lollapalooza stages. So,
is that hypocrisy or ironicism?
I think it's ironicism. Might be a little hypocritical. I don't know. That was a good story.
It's great, whatever it is. It's great.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. So
I got one more for you, though. I got a really good one. Just thought of. If I got a minute, I had to leave, but this will make y'all laugh. Ricky Lee Jones in some venue, Midwest somewhere, no roof, summer day. And we were on early. It wasn't like a nighttime show. And she had notorious stage fright. And also she had a thing where, and we played a lot of theaters, like a lot of municipal theaters where, you know, all the ushers are senior citizens talking about security. And once she started the show, if anybody came walking down that door, right, and down the aisle, she just stopped the show. So what I do is I'd put her on and go running through the lobby, making sure that the ushers who were senior citizens, and in theater, it's typical, they don't open the doors till there's a break, right? So they were somewhat used to it. So anyway, we're out there this day. See, she also had stage fright, and she wasn't using, but she was still drinking. She got a bottle of champagne in the dressing room every day. And I knew it would be either a good or a bad day if she finished the whole thing before she started. Well, she finished the whole thing. And she gets on stage, and like we're in this outdoor amphitheater, about a 3-foot high stage. She comes out, she starts the song. First song's kind of quiet. Some guy, maybe 15 rows up, right on the aisle, is talking. So she just stops, puts her guitar behind her back. She said, "Hey, did you come here to talk or to listen to me fucking sing?" And the guy started arguing with her, and he stood up. He said, "Well, you know." And the next thing I knew, she threw her guitar down, El Kabong, making sound all over the stage. She jumped off the stage into the audience, right? I'm like 2 or 3 steps behind her because I know what's going on. I didn't get to her before she had smacked this guy, like across the face a couple of times. The guy doesn't know what to do. Like he sees her running at him. He's not going to fight her back. He's like covering his head. She's smacking him. I grabbed her around the waist. I picked her up. She's a big woman.
Yes.
It was no easy feat. Walked her back to the stage. The security helped her get on. And she finished. They threw the guy out. Yeah. Him and his either that or he left, but that's a true story.
Wow, it's like if somebody came out of the TV. You know, you're watching TV and somebody comes out of the TV. That guy had to be shocked, right?
Dude,
That's great. That's a great story.
She's in one of the most. I gotta say, out of everybody I've worked for, I've never been around anyone more musically inclined than her. That she breathed music, but she definitely had her quirks.
Oh, she definitely is an outspoken human being.
Oh yeah.
I didn't tell you about it. She's a great lady. I happen to like her a lot. We haven't seen each other in a while, but we used to party all the time together. You know, Tom Waits down there. It was
Tropicana.
The Tropicana. That's right. That's it. Well, what was the name of that? Does anybody remember the name of the motel?
Duke's at the Tropicana.
Well, the coffee shop was Duke's. The motel was the Tropicana.
The Tropicana. Yeah, that's where Tom Waits was, and some fun times. Jimmy
Great breakfast at Duke's.
Blood, Sweat, and Tears used to stay there as well. Yeah. It was an amazing little motel. There's so many stories, so many little stories that permeate that we're in.
Stewart at the old Tour Links invented. I think it was Stewart invented this thing called, you know, what was it with Bob Dates?
You can't make this shit up.
They were great. They were so entertaining. Jan, you ought to think about an afternoon like that. Just telling stories.
I think we could do that. But anyway, listen, I really appreciate you all coming. I'm going to stop the recording right now, but we could stay around a little bit longer if we want. But I just want to encourage you all to spread the word, tell people what we're doing. You know, this is a valuable commodity for people right now because everybody needs somebody, and we are all like-minded, and so it's a really good place and a very safe place where we all care about one another, and we're giving back to the industry with no reason whatsoever other than we want to, and that to me is what makes it all worthwhile. And I say this from the bottom of my heart. You guys make it happen, and I really appreciate it. Tune in next week. It's every Wednesday. We are here every Wednesday at 3:00 West Coast time. And so we hope you can make it next week. And you could always DM me on Facebook or YouTube, and we will send you the link if you want to be part of the panel. So from me to everyone out there who's watching and to everybody on the panel, I want to thank you all for coming, and stay safe, be healthy. And I hope you learned something today, and we will see you all again next week, same time, same place. Cool. And
Thank you.